All right, I'm starting recording right now. Okay, so welcome again to another Celo governance call. In this call, we have like a few handful topics to cover. I'll try to allocate about, for any new proposals or like overview, about between 10 to 15 minutes, 15 minutes max. And any kind of proposal that's been discussed in the past, we do a maximum of 10 minutes. With any status update. And hopefully by the end of the call, we have an hour call. If there's any other unanswered question, we'll have enough time for more Q&A. So for the agenda today, we have a new proposal called CIP 33. CIP 33 is the Celo Euro proposal. So in this call, in the governance call, Nadine's going to give like an 10 to 15 minutes overview, ideally 10 minutes, and then maybe we can have 5 minutes for Q&A. And next week, we have the all-core dev call where Nadine's going to go into like a longer form presentation in order to go deep dive into the technical specs of the proposal for CIP 33. Other proposals we have is CGP 14, 16, 18, 17, and 15. Most of them have been discussed in the past. We just need to cover them again. And then at the end, I'm going to cover contract release 2. We can get started with CIP 33. Nadine, it's all yours if you want to talk.
Yeah, sure. Great. Hi to everyone. Happy New Year. As Jazz has mentioned, there's a CIP that has been merged. It's about the Celo Euro edition, and the idea is to extend the stable asset ecosystem. We started with the Celo dollar, and now the idea is to really have this multi-asset platform, and the Celo Euro would be the first pioneering addition to this currently single asset platform. And as such, this addition would be also kind of a pioneering step because other additions in the future might follow this approach. All the details and the analysis that we have done about the approach, this will follow in the CIP discussion in the all-core dev call next week. But just to tell you, our idea was to use the existing setup, so CP.Doto or Mento as it is called now, and just find the canonical extension of this. And there are, in our view, 2 ways to do this. And we have decided to kind of add an additional independent Mento unit to the platform as an approach. This would just add another pair, so the Celo Euro and the Celo pair as an exchange. Currently, we are not thinking about adding in this approach, but it's up for discussion. We are not thinking about adding a Celo Euro, Celo USD module. So we would have 2 modules then, a Celo USD Celo module as it is existing right now, and another Celo Euro Celo module. What can I say more? There is, maybe I can hand over to Wolfgang. Maybe he can add a little bit about the contract details, because I think he has more overview on that. And if there are questions about economic parts or mathematical parts, I can jump in.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Nadine. So as you mentioned, this is supposed to be a canonical extension of the current setup we have. And for that, we need to basically duplicate the 2 key objects we have in the registry, an object contract that we have in the registry. That is the C Euro or C whatever currency, because we need to have the ledger of the balances. And that will involve deploying a new proxy with the exact same implementations Celo dollar has. At some point, they can diverge and they can have different implementations, but that is not the case for the moment. And for the other parts, we have the exchange, which pretty much follows the same approach. We choose add another exchange to the registry and point to the same implementations of the current exchange we have. We do need to make one smart contract change. That is a GitHub issue that is in the link below, 6165, because currently the reserve implementation can only send to one exchange without spending limits, and then needs to be extended with a list of exchanges that can pull money. So you can pull Celo to fill the tanks. And as Nadim mentioned, this leave us with two completely independent CB Dotos. And there are some miscellaneous for the implementations for this, because obviously we need the oracles. And we need to make sure if we use Celo against the euro, as we do with the Celo, with the Celo dollars, that we use the Celo against the dollar, or if we use some implicit pair using another exchange. And we have some other miscellaneous, like the contract kit should be able to support this new token, and many things that are actually not very complex in comparison to the other thing. So this change will involve a small contract change, and a proposal just deploying new contracts and updating the registry. And that's everything I have in the implementation side. Do you want to open to questions, or want to go a little bit deeper?
Maybe I can quickly just highlight the kind of questions that we had when we were thinking about the different approaches. I mean, they're also in the CIP, but I can just read them out to you. I mean, one of the things that we had in mind is we wanted to have the same level of control that we have right now. So we can control now with the bucket sizes, how much cash flows we can have during one update cycle. And we wanted to have at least an approach that has a similar control. Another thing that was on our mind is the difficulty of the implementation. And then, of course, one of the questions, and this is something we discuss next time, can the approach reach an equilibrium? And with equilibrium, I mean, if arbitrage opportunities that are created through the stability mechanism using this setup, can they reach a state where this arbitrage is used up completely? Or one could think about having two of these modules that they're like disturbing each other. So one of them is creating an arbitrage opportunity. Traders are removing the arbitrage, and at the same time, they're creating new arbitrage. So this would be a system that would not be able to reach an equilibrium. So this was also a question that we had. Of course, the speed of reaching this equilibrium was important to us. Another question was, how can we scale this? Of course, with this independent setup, we can easily add more modules to the platform. One question we also had, do we need direct stable asset swaps? In this current setup that we're thinking about is only possible through an indirect exchange. And then questions regarding liquidity, and also when we're dealing with the Celo euro and low liquidity, are there any ways to proxy if in case we have very low liquidity, especially in the beginning, through fiat exchange rates? So this was a little bit what was on our mind when we were thinking about the different approaches.
Okay, we have probably like I can allocate 2 to 3 minutes for any Q&A, and if you feel like you don't have enough time to ask enough questions, as a reminder, the next week all core dev call is going to be like a more longer form presentation around the technical details as well around CIP 33. Ziad, if you want to ask.
Yeah, I've got a question, but it's slightly different from the economic part of it, but more about the oracles itself. So with this, the oracles will get even more complex potentially, right? And the oracle stuff is still not open source, right? And is this sort of going to continue down the path of oracles becoming even less transparent of what they're doing or not? Because I'm a little bit worried about the fact that that part is still not transparent. We still don't know what the oracles are exactly doing. We still don't know what code is running. So it's sort of adding even more to it without resolving the existing transparency issues.
Can I ask you a clarifying question? When you mean adding complexity, you mean because of the explicit pairs, or just because it's reporting more things?
I guess it was in the document too. There was this question of how do we determine the price, right? So is it going to be directly from the euro to Celo pairs? For euro, that might work. I don't know what the current volumes are. But for example, if you add a stable coin where the volume is too low, then you might have to determine the price from the actual high volume thing, right? Because the highest volume realistically always going to be USD to whatever the new currency is and USD to Celo, because that's going to be way higher volume than the direct conversion, right? So if the Oracle now starts getting some, prices from a foreign exchange website, now it's adding even more complexity to the Oracle, right? Where it is getting the prices from, how it's determining which price is associated with how much volume and all that.
I mean, hopefully with the, as you mentioned, with the euro, it won't be such a big problem, and we will be able to just repeat what we're doing for the Celo USD. That's hopefully. I mean, we just wrote down this question because it was something that came to our mind. And as you said, with later editions where there's less volume, it will be a problem. We don't have a solution to this yet. And of course, we try to propose something that has the least complexity. And hopefully with Celo Euro, we will be able to have the same setup with like Celo USD.
So in this particular case, that will mean this will be solely dependent on Coinbase, right? Because there is no other Euro Celo trading pair.
I guess we could use the same heuristic that we use with Celo dollars. For the trading volume, I remember the proposal was pushed back by a couple of weeks because the volume was low, and we wanted to have more than one exchange listing Celo at the time. So I don't see any reason why we wouldn't apply that same heuristic. Also because you only have one exchange, even though the most liquid exchange in the world, they can come down, right? So it's not really reliant. So if we decide to go down the path of having the direct pair Celo to euro, it will be great to wait to have a second exchange listing the Celo to euro.
Makes sense.
Yeah. I also just want to say, you make a really good point about the oracles not being open source. They should have been open source like a long time ago. There was some things in the code that needed changing. But I think maybe one thing in light of that comment is we should aim to open source the oracles by the time that this, proposal gets executed, such that there is a bit more transparency at that level.
Yeah, I can just add to that. Like, it's been on our list and it's been something that we've been wanting to do for a while now. And I don't see any reason why we can't go ahead and do that in the immediate short term.
All right, in the interest of time, because we have a lot of other proposals, if there are any other questions, I suggest going to if you scroll up on this proposal, there's a discussions to link. And if you go there, it's like a GitHub issue. You can, write down all your questions and stuff. We have an all-core dev call again next week, where we're gonna cover just in more details, more technical deep dive and stuff. So definitely attend that session about CIP 33. Now we have to move on to the next topic. CGP 14, distribute Celo to CUSD holders. JD, want to kick it off?
Yep. Thanks, yes. So Yeah, the main goal of this proposal is it really funds a multi-sig to enable the distribution of Celo to verified users of the protocol based on their CUSD holding. I think the main goal here really is to incentivize early adoption of the network with additional goals around distributing Celo as widely as possible for the long-term health of the network and making the network more attractive to both developers and users by having starting a flywheel of network effects. So I think we discussed the concept of such rewards in the past, and there was pretty good support from the community. The big change that we have with this current proposal is that instead of going to the community for governance vote every time we want to fund the reward, we are basically proposing to fund a lump sum initially, to a multi-sig, a 2 out of 3 multi-sig, that will then have a little bit more act on behalf of the community and have a little bit more freedom to experiment initially with what is the right structure of rewards that leads to the best outcome for the Celo community. The reason for that is because we've observed other networks that have done similar distribution program of core assets, and it turns out in general that the first iteration is rarely the one that is the right one. And so with this proposal, we're kind of giving ourselves a little bit of room to explore what will be the most efficient way to do this distribution. Longer term, I think we would ideally have more of a, once we've found what works well, we would have more of a programmatic way to do this that would be that would not require this this multi-sig system. So in the details, we're initially proposing to fund this multi-sig with 200,000 Celo, which is from the community fund, which is about what the community fund grows in 2 weeks. And we're hoping this will give us 1 to 2 months of iteration with this initial program. So we're hoping that by when this initial sum is spent, we will probably come back to the community with insights on what worked well, what didn't work well, and probably further proposal for how to move forward on such reward systems.
All right, thank you. We have 7-8 minutes for questions. Maybe even less if nobody wants to ask questions, but if anyone has any question, please ask now. Before you ask question, I wanted to share this forum post that we sent out and we published yesterday. Amy published it. It's basically every proposal we're going over right now with the exception of CIP 33 and the contract release 2. So CGP 14 to 18, we have a tentative plan to submit them for governance within this week, with the outcome of the call and stuff. I just wanted to give a heads up and stuff. Now, Q&A for CGP 14. All right, we're not going to move on until somebody asks at least one question.
I have a quick one. Is this to be distributed to every account on the network? Or it has other requirements like phone number verified or things of the sort?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we are going to distribute only to verified users that have gone through the 3 attestations. And we also gonna condition the reward on initially on your CUSD holdings, but maybe we'll iterate on whether you invite other users or things like that. Basically, we're trying to test the parameters that make the most sense for the long-term health of the Celo ecosystem. So initially, for instance, for the initial reward, we're thinking of having a minimum balance of 20 CUSD. And we also will cap the rewards at 500 CUSD. And we're trying to have something very simple in terms of reward system. So we're thinking of fixed bins of rewards rather than a percentage APY, because again, we're really trying to I mean, I think in our core mission is really to create something for everyone, and we believe that it's like a little bit easier to think for the purpose of financial literacy. So it's a little bit easier to understand when it's like framed as like a clear reward that you get for certain holding.
Awesome. Thanks.
Can I ask a quick one?
Mhm.
Will you be sharing the different experimentation that you will be doing, and what's the outcome? Did it work? Did it not work? And how frequently will you be sharing that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we definitely will be sharing the results of our experiments. We are hoping, we initially thought of like running an actual A/B test, but we realized that for the purpose of speed of execution and speed of learning, it probably was easier to launch this, which will allow us to do some communications, external communications around it as well. But we'll definitely share the results as soon as we analyze them with the rest of the community, this being the community fund, and we're really acting on behalf of the community here. So, anything we learn about like where people land and whether they actually cash in or what type of balance they cash in, all this type of things, we'll make sure to share out. Regarding your question on frequency of sharing, I think it will depend on when we learn things. I think like it could be the case that we learn very fast and like within the first couple of days, we already exhaust the budget if like this program is extremely successful, or that it will take actually a couple of weeks to learn initial insights, in which case, we'll definitely keep the community updated on that as well, but we might not have meaningful insights to share until a couple of weeks in.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? We still have like 3 minutes, but if not, we can also move on. Okay,
I was just going to ask if you had any thoughts on who or which entities the multi-sig signatories were going to be.
Yes, we're finalizing that in the next couple of hours so that we can.
Okay.
So yeah, it's we've already contacted like the relevant people, and we'll have that figured out in the next couple of hours. It just we didn't have it in time for the pull request for today's call, but yeah.
Right. Once the multi-signature, holders are determined, there'll be a pull request to update this here entry before the governor's proposal is submitted to the network.
But for context on this, actually, that's a really good question. Like the way we structure this is that there will be one person inside of CLab and 2 other people who are outside of CLab. For really the purpose of this multi-sig is to represent the community at best. And so we did not want this to be solely CLab's people. So there is even though this proposal is initiated from people within CLabs, like I think we really want to make it clear that this is a representation of the community.
Cool. We're at time. Like I suggest we move on. I'll send an email to the community if like any updates are happening, for submitting the proposals and stuff. Let's go back. Okay, CGP 16 and 18. Alec, I'm hoping for 3 and 4, just like maximum 10 minutes. Because I think we covered it last time. Just had to split it up into 2.
Yeah, for sure. This should be really quick. So basically, this is a quick reminder. CGP 16 is to update the baseline quorum factor, which is the proportion of the historical moving average, like participation level that constitutes quorum for a proposal to pass. So we're going to be splitting that in half from a factor of 1 to a factor of 0.5. And yeah, this is something we've discussed before, and the motivation here is basically to make it easier to pass proposals, because right now it takes a lot of participation. And yeah, the main comment from last time was I had batched this in CGP 18 together, and we're splitting that up now. And CGP 18 is just extending the referendum stage duration, which is just the amount of time we have to vote on a proposal after it's been approved. So yeah, so the only real update here is the timeline. So we're actually hoping to submit CGP 16 today, and then CGP 18 should be submitted on Thursday.
Right, and just like as a reminder, the forum post I shared in chat, if you haven't seen it, I can share it again. It will have like the batches or proposals that, you know, are planned for this week. CGP 16 today and 18 on Thursday, and tomorrow there's like 14, 15, and 17. Right. Any questions on the CGP 16 and 18? I'm gonna try a new thing where we ask at least one question before we move on, just to make sure that, you know, everyone yeah, is on board and stuff. If I remember, Ziad, you asked that last time that it's better to split 16 and 18. So do you think like the current proposals right now are good? Like just like, you know, the way they're isolated?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I mean, I think the only question is with the quorum factor at half, if we will actually get down to the minimum baseline or not. Because that was in the forum post to the discussion of how fast, it's not just cutting it in half, but in future, the baseline can just decrease over time. And, you know, how low will it actually decrease, which we'll find out with time. So it's not a big deal.
Yeah, and just to quickly address that, because that's a really good point. I think our takeaway from the last time we discussed that had just been that that would be a risk if we were always just barely passing proposals. But the assumption here is that we would be like clearing the baseline pretty comfortably most of the time, as long as we get the participation of like large holders involved. So yeah, so I think that the motivation for having it is just in case we really have to pass something, we're not stressed about it, but normally we should be able to pass with a comfortable margin, so we won't be like rapidly decreasing the baseline.
Yep, makes sense.
Okay, I think unless somebody else has any questions, I think we're good to go on CGP 16 and 18. Now we're going to CGP 17, activation of Celo Community Fund. Is Deepak here or Patrick? All right, Patrick, you want to take it off?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
right, it's about 10 minutes speaking slot, so use your time wisely. But yeah.
Okay, sounds good. So let me just give an update. We've heard feedback and we've been iterating accordingly. We still need to update the governance proposal based on our most recent blog posts. So we'll get that updated today to reflect the changes that I'm going to discuss. To kind of take a brief history, initially we set a guidelines around like formal and informal boundaries for decision making. Based on the community feedback, we narrowed that down and we said that we would focus in line with where the Celo Foundation was also focusing. We got feedback on that to be more specific. And so as a result, we've decided to focus in on just a few areas still that were highlighted by the Celo Foundation, but areas that we think that just has a lot of need and a lot of capital can be put to work to help grow the Celo ecosystem. So those three areas are on-off ramps, community tools, and research and education. On-off ramps can be fiat to crypto exchanges. They can be other platforms that enable people to access either earn or acquire CUSD, C euros, other C stablecoins, Celo, etc. Community tools include things like dashboards, developer tools, wallets, and the research and education bucket is meant to really provide a quick way to get capital out to people who want to provide content or do other provide other educational resources, hosting educational events, these sorts of things. We received feedback about specifying the sizes and intended quantity of projects. So we've put some numbers around that. We're going to target 30 projects, averaging a funding amount about 22,000 Celo. We anticipate there'll be about 10 small projects that fall on the left side of that bell curve, about 15 in the middle. And then we anticipate that there will be probably 2 that are on the larger side. And again, we'll put those numbers into writing. We've also received feedback and questions about communication cadence. And so we've put some specifics in there. Within 24 hours of funding a proposal, we'll disclose the amount, the team, the intended use of funds. We'll maintain a public spreadsheet with that information, as well as the project name, the website, GitHub, funding dates, the use of funds, basically everything that should be important. And then on a quarterly basis, we'll provide a consolidated document on the progress of the fund recipients. So within 24 hours, we'll disclose any recipients, and then on a quarterly basis, we'll provide a backward-looking update on how the funding has gone so far. We also received feedback regarding minimizing the funds at risk and the best way to essentially structure this. And again, our goal is to set a template so that other teams can come in behind us and use the same template. And so we initially proposed a multi-sig that would have spend authority over the entire amount approved by the community, and essentially the community could reclaim all of those funds via governance proposal. The pushback was that we as a multi-sig could always move faster than the governance proposal, which I think is a fair point. And so what we've iterated to is instead having a release cadence where 1/6 of the funding amount that we're requesting will be released each month. And that amount, of course, will go into a multi-sig. But essentially, if the community wants to reclaim or stop our work, the funds at risk would only be 1/6 each month. With that being said, there may be months where we have some funds undistributed at the end of the month. So I want to set expectations properly. But I think that that's probably a better solution. We also elaborated on our backgrounds because there's questions about, or comments around who should be fulfilling this role. And again, I just want to iterate that, or I just want to say that, we're attempting to set a template here so that others can come in behind us with their proposals, their specific focus, and can essentially just follow the same path that we've set here. So we do have the discussion going on the forum and can continue having conversation there, but let me pause for questions.
Hey, Patrick, this is Deepak. Just to add on to the release cadence or every month with, I think, ERC20 approvals, that might not be possible. So we'll have to update that language on how we will do that. And I think we'll talk to Namus. Nam, can you give us a little more context around that if you're around? And
yeah, I think the original suggestion around reusing release gold was unfortunately incorrect in the sense that it would require an actual transfer to the release gold contract. And so I think the 2 options are to either do so, in which case I think, if I understand correctly, that had unfavorable tax implications. And so I think the only other alternative would be to go back to a multi-sig that has full spending authority, in which case one might want to think about lowering that amount and then getting kind of a top up later.
Got it. Would it be possible to create a release gold contract that is a child of the governance contract? Is that something that is possible to do?
You could write a release gold contract that does an approve instead of a transfer. I'm not sure that at least C Labs has currently capacity to do so, but it's possible.
Okay, all right. I think we'll then talk with I'll talk with Patrick and Dee, and then we'll make the final proposal based on what seems best. Thanks.
I have a question just to clarify. CGP 17 is part of the batch queue that is, presumably to be submitted to the network tomorrow, but it sounds like it just needs to be updated before it can be submitted. So would it be fair to say that it's not ready for tomorrow yet?
Yeah, I think so. Not ready for tomorrow, but we want to do it earliest as either end of this week or early next week.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, so I'll just once you submit a PR with your updates, I'll give it a review and stuff like that. But I think I'll just remove CVP 17 from the forum post and from the calendar for tomorrow, just as one of my action items. Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't you want to wait until the baseline quorum, like the CGP 16 actually passes and is executed, to have it easier time to pass the quorum? Because it's going to be very difficult to get the current quorum is really high. So it might be very difficult for this type of proposals to get that amount of votes in. So you would need to actually wait for the CGP 16 to actually be executed, which would be a week later after the thing is submitted. So it would be quite a bit later because it has to be submitted, go through approval stage, go through referendum, and actually be executed. And only after that you will have the lower baseline.
So the base, like the check for whether a proposal is passing, is dynamically calculated based on that variable. So as soon as that baseline quorum reduction, that proposal is executed, it will apply to any other proposals, including the ones that are already in the pipeline or in the referendum stage.
Oh, I see what you mean. So you will basically make sure that it's executed a little bit before so that we can apply the value and then pass it. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, so the timeline proposed is that we'll do that one by itself on the first day, and then we have 2 separate batches the next 2 days. And I guess it sounds like we need, for this specific proposal, we're going to need the address for whatever multi-sig release gold contract in order to make this proposal to transfer the gold to. And so if you want to be part of this batch, I think the latest that we'd want that by is Thursday morning. But otherwise we could do it later. It's just it might be harder to I guess galvanize all the voters.
We have 30 seconds until the next topic. Does anyone have any question? But we're kind of short on time as well. Okay, I can safely move on to CGP 15, Attestation Expiry update. Amy, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, this one's pretty simple. So this is just increasing the expiration duration for attestation requests that are on chain. Right now, this expiry is set pretty arbitrarily to 1 hour. It doesn't have major impact on much. So the reason we are hoping to extend it is we've seen in practice that some people will request attestation or request a attestation, and if it takes longer than several minutes, may lose attention and then come back over an hour later, having received their text message and attempting to use it, and it doesn't work. And so this either requires paying for another attestation or just a lot of confusion and requesting customer support. And support teams, at least from our experience, it's really hard to respond within 1 hour to every request. and to help people through this if their attestations have already expired. So the proposal has been just to extend it to a day. And this doesn't limit, for example, any client that wants to interact with the on-chain contract, they can still request, they can decide that they don't want to use other valid unexpired attestations if they want to try and request additional ones. So they can set their own limit as well.
As a note on that, does the current SMS message say that the attestation will expire within a certain time? Like, does it say that it will expire in an hour, or will it say that it will expire in a day? That might also help.
Yeah, it doesn't currently. The current version is a link. And I think we're like at the max of our like length of SMS. The new one is that we're going to be launching soon is like an 8-digit code, and perhaps there might be room in the SMS to include that as well.
Any other questions?
Yeah, and we have done things like adding them to the application to say, hey, like these will expire. I think this the initial request for this is really from support teams being like, we can't help people if their things have expired.
And this proposal going to be submitted tomorrow, right?
Yes, or I believe so.
Yeah, I think it's tomorrow in the forum post. Okay. Alrighty. If there are no other questions, we can move on to the final topic item. And if we have a little bit of time at the end, people can ask about any of the other items that if they didn't have a chance to ask. So the final item, the contract release due. CVP, I need to add the CVP, but like we have the forum post for it. So now you want to kick it off?
Yes, happy to do so. So after a successful release 1, we are in time for a release 2 to upgrade the contracts. Release established a process to upgrade contracts for the first time, which includes a way to do so safely and transparently to Celo stakeholders. I think that one was like a pretty big one that might have been, yeah, I think just took a lot of time to kind of get right. And so now we're in a position to do much more agile changes to the core contracts. As it turns out to be, release 2 is rather small. And so you can see the linked release notes on the forum post, as well as in the future CGP as well. Really, the only things, the 2 meaningful things that happened was that the signatures library was extended to have EIP 712 support. And then the sorted oracles contract allows for per token report expiry. Because the signatures library is used across various core contracts, it will look, the on-chain proposal will look like it will result in the update of implementations for various core contracts. And so I think if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see the specific version changes that are imputed by the updated use of signatures, of the signatures library. Additionally, CLabs has created a contract called Meta Transaction Wallet, which will be used currently as part of the feedless onboarding, and then in the future, possibly to support additional features such as account recovery and others. And as part of the audit scope, they are basically being audited by OpenZeppelin. And so we figured we as well highlight changes to these kind of contracts, similar to release gold here as well. What's currently not reflected in this release notes is additionally the fix to the incident report that was posted last night. It's a fix that ensures that governance proposals cannot be voted on twice, and updating the release notes to reflect that change. Changes, we hope to finalize the audit report, finalize audit fixes this week. There aren't any like critical issues that OpenZep has found so far. And hopefully testing will allow us to submit the proposal on Baklava next week. And the current timeline, we expect for the proposal to land on mainnet around January 25. I'll take questions now.
Are there any questions about contract release 2? I wanted to give also like a special shout out to Zviad for reporting the bug for the incident report. Like he reported it to us right before the holidays, and really appreciate that. Thank you. It's a really good find, to be honest. Okay, if there's no questions on the contract release due, we have 10 minutes to take like any kind of question on any of the items on the agenda. So, if you missed out on one of the items and you want to ask the question, feel free to do that right now. Okay, I guess nobody has any question. I guess I'll stop sharing. Stop sharing. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So I wanted to thank you all for another governance call. As a reminder, we have the all core dev call next week, which is going to be more like a long form presentation on CIP 33, the Celo Euro proposal. It's going to be presented by Nadeem. One of the things that we're going to be doing, at least from the core dev side, is we're going to be asking questions about the process for adding a new currency, and maybe if we can formalize or standardize that kind of process for, in case in the future more currencies can be added that way and stuff. But yeah, it's on the Celo Signal calendar for next week. I'll send another reminder next Monday as well in an email and on Discord and stuff. But yeah, thank you all and take care. Have a good week.